I knew something was off the moment she stepped onto the bus. Not because she was loud, not yet anyway, but because of the way she moved, like she expected the world to shift for her convenience. She barely glanced at the rest of us, her eyes scanning for an empty seat like a queen looking for her throne. But the bus was packed, shoulder to shoulder with tired people just trying to get home. She hesitated. Then, as if the thought of standing were beneath her, she turned to the driver. "There's no open seats," she announced, her voice sharp enough to slice through the hum of conversation. The driver, a stocky man with a permanently exhausted expression, barely glanced at her. "Yeah," he grunted. She blinked, waiting for him to do something. He didn't. "Okay, but I need a seat," she said, this time louder. The driver exhaled through his nose. "Then you'll have to wait until someone gets off." And that's when the performance started. She turned, dramatically surveying the bus, and let out a sigh so exaggerated you'd think she was being asked to walk barefoot over glass. She clutched her phone in one manicured hand, the other perched on her hip, ready to unleash some first-world grievance. That's when her eyes landed on me. I was seated near the middle, my purse on my lap, my hands folded neatly over it. I was old, yes, pushing 75, but I wasn't feeble, and I sure as hell wasn't about to give up my seat to a woman half my age with a bad attitude, her gaze locked onto mine like a predator spotting its prey. "Excuse me," she said, plastering on a thin, unconvincing smile. "I need to sit." I didn't move. So does everyone else. Her smile twitched. "I mean, I really need to sit. I have a bad back." I cocked my head. "Then maybe you shouldn't wear heels that high." A couple of people chuckled, and a flicker of something ugly crossed her face. "You're seriously not going to let me sit?" she asked, her voice gaining volume. "You're seriously asking me to give up my seat?" I shot back. A murmur passed. Through the bus. People were watching now, eyes darting between us. She scoffed and flipped her hair over her shoulder. Wow, the entitlement. That got a full laugh from a man sitting across the aisle. "You hear yourself?" he asked, shaking his head. She turned on him like a snake. "I have 1.2 million followers. I could ruin this bus company with a single post." That got people's attention. A few folks exchanged glances. Someone muttered, "Oh, she's one of those." She straightened her shoulders, sensing she had an audience. "I'm just saying, I have influence. If people knew how rude the passengers on this bus were, how unwilling to help someone in need—" "You're not in need," I interrupted. "You're just mad no one's making life easier for you." That hit a nerve. Her face twisted in barely contained fury. "This is discrimination," she spat. A guy standing near the front groaned. "Lady, you're standing on a bus, not fighting the Supreme Court." Her lips parted, but before she could spew more nonsense, the driver cut in. "If you don't want to stand, you're welcome to get off." That should have been the end of it. Any reasonable person would have let it go. But she wasn't reasonable. She was privileged. She was entitled. And she was about to make this everyone's problem. With a dramatic huff, she turned back to me, pulling out her phone. She swiped to her camera, angling it so that I was in frame. "So this is what we're dealing with today," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "An elderly woman who refuses to show basic human decency. Imagine that, folks." "Oh, we're imagining it, all right," I muttered. A few more snickers rippled through the bus, but she ignored them, launching into full performance mode. "I don't usually do this," she continued, speaking as if narrating a documentary. "But I have to call this out. It's shocking, really, how selfish some people can be." Someone behind her muttered, "Shocking is right." She turned, ready to bite, but before she could, another passenger piped up. A younger woman in scrubs, looking like she'd just finished a long shift at a hospital. "Hey, aren't you that lady from the grocery store video?" That hit like a gunshot. The bus fell silent. Her face went white. "Oh, that's where I've seen her before," someone else chimed in. "You went viral last year, didn't you? Had a whole meltdown because the store ran out of your oat milk?" A low wave of laughter spread through. "The bus!" Her mouth opened, then shut. That video was edited," she snapped. The younger woman in scrubs raised an eyebrow. Was it? And just like that, the tide turned. She'd come in swinging, expecting everyone to bow to her tantrum, but now? Now she was the joke. People pulled out their phones, whispering, giggling, filming. Not the oat milk lady, someone whispered between laughs. She tried to recover, flipping her hair, standing taller. "This is harassment," she said, her voice trembling with rage. The driver sighed. "Look, you got two choices. Stand or get off. What's it going to be?" She clenched her jaw. "You'll regret this," she hissed. The driver tapped his fingers against the wheel. "Final warning." Her hands curled into fists, her whole body shaking. Then, in a last-ditch effort to reclaim her power, she lunged for my bag. "Give me the seat." That was it. The driver slammed the brakes. A collective gasp rippled through the bus. I yanked my bag away, and before I could react, 3 different passengers moved at once, one grabbing her arm, another stepping between us. The bus driver picked up his radio. "Dispatch? Yeah, we got a problem." And just like that, her tantrum had officially crossed the line. But the real chaos? Oh, that was just getting started. The moment the driver put that call in, something in her snapped. You serious?" she shrieked. "You're calling the cops? For what? Because I want a seat?" Nobody answered. Nobody had to. The silence around her was deafening. People weren't even trying to hide their smirks anymore. A few passengers were recording, their phones angled just enough for her to see the little red dot blinking on their screens. And she knew. She knew this was slipping out of her control, and she hated it. "You're all insane!" she spat, looking around wildly for some kind of ally, some poor soul she could drag onto her sinking ship. "This is disgusting. I have a right to sit." The driver exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand over his face like he was debating whether or not he was getting paid enough for this nonsense. "Lady, you lost that right when you put hands on a passenger," he said. "Now you can either wait for the police or you can step off this bus on your own. That should have been the end of it. Should have been." Instead, she laughed, a short, manic little burst, her teeth flashing in something that wasn't quite a smile. "You think the cops are going to do anything to me?" she scoffed. "Do you know who I am?" That got some groans. "Oh, here we go," someone muttered. "I am a public figure," she continued, straightening her spine as if that made her 10 feet taller. "I have influence. I know people. I can have this whole place shut down if I want to. Do you have any idea how much damage I could do with a single post?" She held up her phone, shaking it in the air like a weapon. "I could ruin your life," she sneered at the driver. "I could get every single one of you fired." Someone behind her snorted, "Ma'am, it's a bus." The laughter that followed was immediate, and oh, she hated that. Her face turned a blotchy shade of red, and she gritted her teeth, eyes darting around the space like a caged animal. Then she tried another tactic. She gasped, throwing a hand over her chest, as if suddenly remembering she was the victim here. "This is discrimination," she declared, her voice wobbling with performative outrage. "I'm being targeted right now because I'm a woman, because I have a platform, because I—" "You shoved an old lady," a voice deadpanned from the back. I smirked. Her eye twitched. "I barely touched her." "Ma'am," the driver interrupted, exasperation dripping from every syllable. "Sit down or get off." And that's when she made her next mistake. She lurched forward, one hand grabbing onto a nearby pole, the other pointing a manicured finger right in the driver's face. "I'm not going anywhere," she snarled. The moment she got too close, he raised a hand. Not to touch her, not to threaten, just to warn. But she jumped back like he'd taken a swing at her. "Did you just—" Her eyes lit up with opportunity. "Did you just try to hit me?" "Oh, hell no." The driver's head snapped back. "What? No!" Her face morphed into something tragic, something calculated, and she let out a breathless, trembling little gasp. "Oh my God," she whispered, clutching her chest. "He just tried to assault me." And just like that, the whole bus erupted. People shouted, some in shock, some in outrage, most, however, in sheer disbelief. "Oh, come on," someone groaned. "You psycho," another snapped. "I got the whole thing on video," a woman near the front announced, waving her phone. "You're lying." But she was already full tilt into her performance, swaying like she was about to faint, her face contorted in some unholy mix of horror and self-righteousness. "This is unbelievable," she sobbed. "I don't feel safe. A knock at—" The bus door cut her off. Heads whipped toward the front. Standing outside, hands resting on their belts, were two police officers. And for the first time since she stepped onto the bus, she hesitated. "Oh, this is about to be good," someone whispered excitedly. The driver didn't hesitate. He yanked the doors open. "Yeah, she's the problem," he said immediately, jabbing a finger in her direction. The cop stepped in. She straightened, adjusting her hair, fixing her jacket, smoothing her features back into something presentable. "Officers," she greeted, voice trembling with rehearsed distress. "Thank God you're here. I was just assaulted." "We have footage," someone interjected. One of the officers sighed. "Of what, exactly?" "Of everything," the woman near the front supplied. "She's lying." The influencer blanched. The cops exchanged looks. "Ma'am," the taller one said, "I'm going to need you to step off the bus." Her mouth fell open. "What? You heard him," the driver said. She laughed, shrill and disbelieving. "You're serious? You're going to believe them over me?" The officer shrugged. "We're going to look at the footage." "No," she snapped. "You need to escort him off." She pointed at the driver. "Because he hit me." Silence. Then, the second officer, the one who hadn't spoken yet, tilted his head. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "are you sure you want to go with that story?" That stopped her. She licked her lips, suddenly nervous. "We already have one complaint about—" "You from last year," the cop continued, glancing at his partner. "Same department, right?" My eyes widened. The bus exploded again. "No way!" someone gasped. "I knew she looked familiar," another added. The influencer was frozen, her mouth moving but no sound coming out. The cop sighed. "Yeah, you were flagged for disorderly conduct. At a grocery store. Caused a public disturbance over—" He paused, checking his notes. Then he blinked. "Oat milk?" The bus howled. She turned red. The second officer sighed and lifted his radio. "We're going to need backup." Her eyes widened. "No," she snapped. "No, She turned, tried to run. But the first officer caught her arm before she could bolt. The bus doors slammed shut, and just like that, her world started crumbling. But the real twist? Oh, it was still coming. She yanked against the officer's grip, a wild, frantic movement, less like someone who had something to say, and more like a trapped animal realizing the cage door had swung shut. "Let go of me," she screeched, her voice clawing at the air. "I didn't do anything wrong." The bus was electric now, a tangled mix of muttered laughter and outright gasps. More passengers were recording, their screens glowing like fireflies in the dim light. She saw them, and she hated them for it. "You're making a mistake!" she shrieked at the officers, her voice climbing higher, splitting at the edges. "You don't know who you're dealing with!" The taller cop sighed through his nose, like a man who'd been through this song and dance one too many times. "Ma'am, we're not arresting you," he said, though his patience was thinning fast. "We're just escorting you off the bus to assess the situation." "Assess what?" she spat, whipping around to glare at him. "These people are lying. I was assaulted. I'm the victim here." Her voice cracked. She was losing steam. "No." One believed her. Not the driver. Not the officers. And certainly not the crowd watching her unravel like a loose thread on a cheap sweater. The bus was a jury now, and their verdict was clear. The officer glanced at his partner, who gave him a look. "That said, we both know how this is going to go. All right?" The first officer muttered under his breath, then looked back at her. "Off the bus! Now!" The fingers of her free hand curled into a fist. She knew she couldn't win this way, so she changed tactics. Again, with a sharp, sudden gasp, she collapsed. One moment she was standing tall, defiant. The next, she crumpled like a marionette with its strings cut, her legs buckling, her body slumping against the officer's hold. "Oh, come on," someone groaned. "I knew she was going to pull this," another passenger muttered. But she committed to the bit, clutching at her chest with the skill of a seasoned actress in a low-budget soap opera. "I can't," she gasped, eyes fluttering as if she were seconds from unconsciousness. I can't breathe." The officers hesitated. That was all she needed. Her free hand shot out, clawing for the phone of the woman in scrubs, the one who had first recognized her. The younger woman yelped, yanking her device away just in time. "Oh, you crazy," she hissed, stepping back fast, but the influencer wasn't giving up. She lunged again, this time reaching for a man's phone, her fingers desperate to snatch at anything that might make this go away. "Delete it!" she screamed, her voice cracking as she twisted in the officer's grip. "Delete the videos." Nobody did. Instead, the recording continued, capturing every second of her spiral, every ounce of her unraveling. And the more she struggled, the worse it got. "This is illegal," she screeched, her voice raw now. "You can't record me without my permission." A deep belly laugh burst from the back of the bus. "Lady, you're in public." More chuckles followed. Her breath hitched, panic leaking into the cracks of her fury. She wasn't used to this. She wasn't used to losing. The officers had had enough. "All right, that's it," the taller one muttered, pulling out his cuffs. And that's when she really lost it. "You can't arrest me," she shrieked, thrashing so wildly the cop nearly lost his grip. "I know people, I'll sue you. I'll—" Her words slammed to a halt as a new sound cut through the bus. Ding. A phone notification. Another. Then another. People glanced down at their screens. Brows lifted. Grins spread. My own phone vibrated in my purse and I pulled it out, my eyes skimming the lit-up screen. And then I laughed, because, oh, this was priceless. Someone had already uploaded the video. Not just a clip, no. The whole messy, glorious spectacle, and it was spreading like wildfire. "She's trending," the guy in the hoodie whispered, barely able to contain his glee. Another notification popped up, and another. Someone near the back held up their phone, displaying the screen. A headline from a gossip site flashed in big, bold letters. "Influencer tantrum caught on camera, again." The influencer's head snapped toward the screen, and her whole body froze. I swear, I saw the exact second she realized what was happening. Not only was this moment not going away, it was already everywhere. A cold, sickly kind of horror washed over her face, and her fingers twitched, reaching for a phone that wasn't there. "No," she whispered, her pupils blown wide. The officers exchanged glances. The driver folded his arms. The bus passengers. Oh, they were loving this. "Smile, sweetheart," the guy with the hoodie smirked. "You just went viral." And that was the moment she cracked. With an inhuman screech, she twisted, lunging for the nearest person, trying desperately to claw back even a shred of control. The officer barely had time to react. Her nails scraped at the guy's hoodie, her whole body lunging. But before she could make contact, the second cop moved. Fast. With a practiced, effortless motion, he twisted her arm behind her back, spinning her around before she could lash out again. "This is assault," he said flatly. "You're under arrest." The cuffs snapped into place, and the bus erupted, cheering, applause, a few scattered whistles. The influencer went rigid. "No," she whimpered, barely audible over the noise. But the cops weren't listening anymore. They were already guiding her toward the door. The bus driver stepped aside, watching her with the expression of a man who had just lived through the wildest shift of his life. I leaned back, my lips curling into a small, satisfied smile. But I knew something she didn't. Something none of them knew yet. This was just the beginning of her nightmare. Because what she didn't realize, what was about to destroy her, was waiting for her on the other side of that door. And when she saw him, oh, then she'd know she was truly doomed. The moment the officers dragged her off the bus, her body tensed like she'd hit an invisible wall. Her breath hitched, her face drained of color, because standing just beyond the flashing patrol lights, arms crossed, was Detective Marcus Tate. I didn't know him personally, but I knew of him. He wasn't just any cop. He was internal affairs, the type of man you didn't want digging into your business. And judging by the way his mouth twisted into something between amusement and deep satisfaction, he knew exactly who she was. And, more importantly, she knew who he was. Her entire body stiffened, panic flickering behind her eyes like a dying candle. No, she whispered, shaking her head. Not you. Detective Tate tilted his head, giving her a look that dripped with mock sympathy. Long time no see, Ms. Calloway. Calloway. So that was her name. Didn't matter. Nobody was going to remember that when this was over. I don't... Her voice cracked. She wet her lips, searching desperately for a way out, for anything to regain her footing. This is a misunderstanding. These people are lying. I was attacked. Tate hummed, flipping open a notepad. That's so? She nodded so quickly, it looked like her neck might snap. He made a tisk sound, then reached into his coat pocket. Pulled out a phone. Not his. Hers. She froze. You left this at your last little incident, he said, turning the screen so she could see it. Remember? That coffee shop last month? Her pupils blew wide. Oh, she remembered. And now, so did everyone else, because Detective Tate, God bless him, hit play. And then the voice of Tantrum Calloway, as the internet was now calling her, rang out from her own phone speaker. You are going to give me this coffee for free, or I will have my followers tear this place apart. The bus crowd was already spilling onto the sidewalk, eager for the encore performance. People murmured, some whispering, "Oh no," while others just cackled. The video continued. Her voice, dripping with entitlement, filled the street. I will make sure you're pathetic. Business never gets another customer again. I deserve respect. You think your little nobody job makes you better than me? I know people. I could have you fired by the end of the day. The video ended with the unmistakable sound of her screaming as the barista threw a cup of iced water directly onto her phone. By the time the clip stopped playing, you could hear a pin drop. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, "You! She's been doing this everywhere." And that was it. That was the kill shot. Because within seconds, the floodgates opened. People were pulling up old articles, Twitter threads, dozens of viral videos exposing her entitled rampages across the city. A guy in a puffer jacket whistled. She got kicked. Out of a yoga studio for threatening to sue over a dirty mat? She tried to get a Starbucks worker fired for misspelling her name? A girl gasped, holding up her phone. Holy? She got banned from an entire resort for harassing a pool boy? It was bad, it was brutal, and it was all real. Every single word. Tantrum Calloway, who had once built her entire brand on curated perfection, was now being buried alive under the weight of her own hypocrisy. Her breath was shaky, her fingers twitching at her sides, like she was itching to snatch up every phone and crush them under her designer heels. But there was no stopping this. It was a landslide, a reckoning. And the cherry on top? Detective Tate leaned in, voice dropping just low enough to make sure only she and I could hear him. We just reopened your fraud case, by the way. She jerked. My brows lifted. Fraud? Oh, that was rich. Her entire face twisted in something ugly. Then she screamed. A raw, unhinged, shattering sound that echoed down the street. The cops didn't flinch. The crowd cheered. And then, just to make things even sweeter, someone called out, "Hey, lady, there's your seat," and pointed at the back seat of the police car. That was when she completely broke. Tears streamed down her face, her lips moving in frantic, silent pleas as the officers opened the door and shoved her inside. Click. The door shut. Just like that, she was done. For the first time in what was probably her entire life, nobody cared what she had to say. She was powerless. A joke. And by tomorrow, she wouldn't just be an embarrassment. She'd be infamous. I exhaled, shaking my head with a smirk. Damn, the driver muttered beside me, watching as the police car pulled away. Some people just don't know when to quit. Nope, I agreed, folding my hands over my purse. The crowd started to disperse, people muttering, laughing, shaking their heads as they trickled away. The bus doors hissed open again, welcoming back the passengers who had stepped off to witness the grand finale, and just like that, life moved on. The internet would devour her. The media would tear her apart. But me? I was just going to enjoy my ride home. As I settled back into my seat, the driver called out over his shoulder, "All right, folks, we done with the circus? Let's roll." The engine rumbled. The bus jerked forward, and as we pulled away from the flashing lights, I let out a little chuckle. Not because I was happy she got dragged away in cuffs, not even because of the poetic justice of it all, but because somewhere out there, in some overpriced apartment filled with ring lights and designer clothes, there was an entire PR team having the worst night of their lives. And that was priceless.